Listening and learning is titled Social Insects, Ants, and Termites. So think about what you might know about termites. I can think of one thing right away that I think of is what they eat. So some vocabulary we'll need to know today is aggressive. To be aggressive means forceful or ready to attack. Like a mother bear became aggressive when people went near her cubs. Chambers is empty enclosed spaces. So when I think of chambers, I think of like a castle with a bunch of rooms. It has a bunch of chambers. Destructive, causing a large amount of damage or harm. Example is the destructive puppy chewed through the new sofa. And emit is to send out or give off. An example would be fire alarms emit a very loud noise so people will hear them easily. And the last word is nurseries. That's a place to breed and care for young animals and plants. An example is worker ants feed baby ants in separate chambers or nurseries. So when you hear social insects, think about what the word social might mean. The first picture is a black garden ant, and I know we've all seen these before. Hi there, everybody. Because I'm one of the most common insects on the planet, I'm sure you know that I'm an ant. But did you realize how much my cousins and I look like a wasp? Take a close look. So I can think of something right now looking at this ant that we talked about the last time I read Listening and Learning about the parts of an insect and what makes an insect an insect. You can see they look a lot alike just in these two pictures. See how slender or thin our waistlines are? Mine is usually flexible, making it easy to bend and twist. Count my body parts. You'll see that I have 3, just like all other insects. My head, with its long antennae, my thorax, and my abdomen. Here's something you might not know. I have 2 stomachs. Both are located in my abdomen, but one is for my own digestion, and the other, called the crop, is just a storage bin where I keep food for other ants. The fact that I store food for other ants should tell you something about me. What does it tell you about you? What could it be about ants and the word social? So it means that ants are social insects. They raise and care for our young in ant colonies. There are many different kinds of ants with many different ways of life. So when I think of ants, I usually think of a large group of ants, or a bunch of ants carrying one piece of food and working together. So that would mean they're social because they work with each other. Carpenter ants build their nests in wood. Leafcutter ants grow fungus on the leaves they cut in vast or very large underground gardens. The aggressive weaver ants live in leaves they bind together in trees. The huge colonies of army ants travel in groups, eating everything in sight. Those are like the ones I thought of. Trapjaw ants can jump distances of more than 12 inches. So if you remember 12 inches, that's a whole foot. They can jump 1 whole foot. Harvester ants build huge nest mounds where they store seeds. Beware of the red fire ants, they sting. So that one is also kind of like a wasp because they can sting too. I am a black garden ant, the type that you may see most often. So that is the kind of ant I'm going to tell you about today. Like many other ants, we live in underground tunnels or passageways. Bees have honeycombs, paper wasps have paper nests, and we have tunnels, miles and miles of tunnels, full of little chambers or rooms, hundreds of very dark chambers. A colony may have as few as 12 ants or as many as 1,000,000 or more. The center of an ant colony's life is this nest of tunnels. Could you imagine seeing 1,000,000 ants? That would be disgusting for Mr. Schmitz anyway. But it would be awesome to be able to see their miles of tunnels. This is a winged queen ant. An ant colony begins with the queen. A young queen is born in one colony, but leaves that colony to start her own. Her wings carry her into the air to find a mate. Once she mates, she sheds her wings and immediately finds a nesting place underground. There she builds a chamber and seals herself inside to lay her eggs. So think about what else you know that might have a queen. When ant larvae hatch, the queen cares for the first brood herself, feeding them with her own saliva as they change from worm-like larvae into pupae, and finally adults. The queen does not leave the nest this whole time, getting nutrition from her now useless wing muscles in order to survive. So she doesn't need her wings anymore since she's already laid the pupae and larvae. Ants undergo a complete metamorphosis. Most of the eggs develop into small female worker ants that begin their lifetime of hard work by gathering food for the queen, making sure she is well fed. The queen will never leave the nest ever again, living there for 10 to 20 years, perhaps even longer. As the mother of the colony, she has her own special chamber. Her only job from this point on is to lay eggs. So she could lay in that chamber for 20 years, just laying eggs, not doing anything else. These are worker ants feeding larvae, and larvae are the newly born baby ants. The worker ants carry the eggs from the queen's chamber into nurseries, where they keep the eggs clean and moist by licking them until they hatch. Then they carry the larvae into separate chambers to feed them. Black ants eat other insects, any crumbs that we can find, and the honeydew of aphids. We chew up the food well and put it in a pouch in our mouths, where the liquid is squeezed out of it. We spit out the solid parts and swallow the liquid. Remember, we have two stomachs, one being a crop for storing food, so worker ants come back to the nest with crops full of food for the young. So they store food in their crop, which is like their second stomach, and then they can give it to the larvae from there. These are pupae, like pupa. As they grow, the larvae molt a few times, and after a few weeks they spin cocoons. I know we can all think of something else that spins a cocoon. The worker ants move these newly formed pupae into much drier chambers where they rest until they're ready to gnaw their way out into the world. As social insects, ants cooperate in many ways. When these new workers emerge, some will help care for the queen and larvae, and some will build and repair the tunnels, but others will guard the nest. So what do you think ants could guard the nest from? Maybe there are some things out there that eat ants that you could think of. These guards, called soldier ants, have larger heads and jaws than the other ants, and they place their bodies across the entrance to the nest to defend the colony. And you can see that they look a little mean. They look like they're going to be guarding it. All ants, including soldier ants, emit chemical signals that other ants smell with their antennae. Soldier ants use these signals to warn the colony of danger. This is one way the ants communicate or share information. So they can actually put out a chemical, and the other ants will feel it on their antennae and know that there's danger. Another way ants communicate is through touch. If an ant is hungry, it taps a food gatherer lightly with its antennae to let it know that it would like to eat. They exchange the food mouth to mouth in what looks like little kisses. When food is shared, the ants also share and pass along some chemical information important for the entire colony. If one of us ants gets trapped when the soil around us caves in, we produce a squeaky sound by rubbing joints together, and other ants hear the cry for help through their legs. So there are many different ways that these ants can communicate, more than you'd think of. These are termites and cockroaches. Before I leave, I want to introduce you to another social insect that some people mistakenly call white ants. Do you think these look like ants? Well, they're not. They're termites. Termites are more closely related to cockroaches, and yet they do not have hard exoskeletons. They are soft-bodied and nearly blind. They would not survive as solitary insects on their own, but they're very successful social insects. So solitary means there's one. They live by themselves. But social, just like ants and termites, they live in one big group. There are several differences between termites and the other social insects you've learned about: honeybees, paper wasps, and ants. Termites do not go through as many stages of development. They skip the pupa stage, so their metamorphosis is incomplete. Now, there is a picture of something giant. Do you have any guesses what it might be? Bees have it, and we just talked about ants have one. So this is a termite queen. The termite society is a bit different as well. Both a king and a queen rule the termite colonies. They start a colony together. The queen is the most important member of the colony, sometimes laying 6,000 or 7,000 eggs a day. She is so well protected by the countless number of worker termites that it is almost impossible to find her within the colony. Just in case something should happen to the royal couple, termite colonies include substitute kings and queens as well. Look at the size compared to the rest. These are termite soldiers. Termite workers perform similar jobs to the worker ants, but the job of guarding the colony rests with a small number of soldiers equipped with strong legs and long, powerful jaws. Unlike honeybees, paper wasps, and ants, where all the workers are female, in the termite colonies, both male and female workers are important members of the society. So when I said I think of termites, I think of what they eat. I know they eat wood, because you do not want termites to get into your house. Termites' favorite food is wood. They can be very destructive if they choose to eat through the walls of a house. Depending on where they live, some termite species eat insects, waste materials, and fungus. They build their temperature-controlled nests underground inside fallen trees, in timber, and in tree branches. There's a look at termite nest in a tree, and that's a termite mound on the right. Does this nest look a bit like a wasp nest? I think it does. It's made of chewed wood and saliva like the wasp nest, but with added mud and soil. Some termites build mounds above ground to house their colonies. These towering mud structures are hard as rock, and some are as tall as a 2-story house. Lots of teamwork goes into building these mounds with incredible air conditioning systems to keep the chambers cool in very hot climates. So look at that picture. You can see how tall that person is. They build that all the way up and they live inside of that. Next time you'll hear from an insect that glows in the dark. Until then, be thinking about who that might be. So think about who that might be that glows in the dark. I bet you can probably take a pretty good guess.